these times of uncertainty, it's all the more important that we keep collaborating, informing, and inspiring each other, so that we can be smarter and better tomorrow. Welcome to the Pakhuis de Zwijger LIVECAST.
Yes, what's good, everybody? I would like to thank you for tuning into this livecast of Infected Cities. My name is Yorgos Lazatis, and I'm your moderator of today. And today we're going to the east of Europe. We're going to Poland, Warsaw to be exact, and we have some amazing speakers via Zoom, which I will introduce to you later. But first, about the series. This program was created by Pakhuis de Zwijger and DutchCulture, and it's the 14th in the series called Infected Cities. And in this series, we will zoom in on different cities in Europe, because during these times, we can't travel, so we try to find other ways to stay connected. Together with DutchCulture, we searched for different city makers in Warsaw, such as artists, journalists, curators, and other creatives. And during this broadcast, the guests will give us an insight into their daily works and explain how they commit to make a positive impact in their city in ongoing Corona times. So for our Dutch viewers, I want to give you some background information about the current situation in Poland. There are 1.4 million corona cases right now, and lately there were also protests over a court ruling that imposed a near total abortion ban in the country. So the ruling made it illegal to end an early pregnancy. We'll talk about it later with our speakers, and thousands of people were on the streets to fight for their rights because they were worried about the future of the country itself. Luckily, we have some guests via Zoom, and they will give us an insight about the current situation. For the first panel, I would like to introduce two guests. My first guest is a sociologist and chairman of the board of Stocznia, and his name is Kuba Wignański. Hello, Kuba.
Hello.
Hi, nice to have you here. And also Malgorzata Boskarczewska. Hello, Malgorzata. Hello. You're a journalist and editor-in-chief of Polonia.nl. Yes. So, Malgorzata, I'm going to start off with you. I'm very interested in the context within which the corona crisis unfolded. So, what were the most defining events or moments of 2020 in Poland? Can you describe them shortly for us?
Sure. For me, and from the editors, the most defining moments were, first of all, the elections, presidential elections, held in June and July in Poland, because the winner, in case Andrzej Duda, president, prolonged stay at power. So it was important who will be the political balance in Poland. And secondly, it was the strike kobiet, so the strike of women, which happened in October and in November, taking huge crowds to the streets of Warsaw. The huge demonstrations took place since 1989. The women were protesting against the nearly total ban on abortion in Poland, and they were fighting for their rights. And what was very important, that there were not only women on streets, young women, but also young men, joined by young men. And what we see now, the strike, women's strike led by Lampard, is they embrace the broaden agenda. They are not only concentrating on women's rights, but also on labor market, on citizens. Mm-hmm. They created a platform to let people share their voice and tell the politicians what to do, because in the opinion of Marta Lampard, the leader of this movement, broad civic movement, the politicians, especially from opposition side, are totally failing. So this is very innovative, and for me, from my perspective, I'm living in the Netherlands. It's a very inspiring thing that civil society is is living in Poland, and people go to streets and try to organize themselves. Yes.
Yeah. Very interesting what you say there. But Kuba, I want to ask you also a question. Because the pandemic all over the world, in Poland, what are the social consequences of this pandemic?
I think it's the first kind of a crisis and pandemic of that kind of range, in the sense of being global, not only in terms of geography, but also chronology. So I think it's very hard to be, unluckily, very hard to be very kind of unique in that thing, or even. So I think it's very similar all over at least in Europe. So what can I say? As a father of 3 kids, I mean, we have kind of a everyday consequences that the kids are not at school. We have to reorganize everything in terms of our, work. We discovered, the necessity and importance of essential services and jobs. Some people are happy as myself, so I can organize my work from home. Otherwise, I think it's right now it's on the edge of the tragedy for people, for example, who are running a tourist business or many others. So it's going to be, so we are on the edge of the civil disobedience being right now. Politically is a very triggering moment, because a week ago, government decided to change the kind of a penal code, in the sense that you have to accept, it's a technical thing, but basically right now that used to be the way that if you are asked by a police to basically being punished, you have the choice not to accept that and then go to the court. So the police can have to deliver the kind of a proof of your guilt. Now they want to turn it, so you have to accept it, and then you go to the court. But anyway, they prepared, I think, using word they, I mean the current government, I think, for this kind of predictable tensions, because a lot of people are on the edge of the economical existence, but also in terms of this kind of a mental kind of a mindset right now. We are so tired. And I think it's the first wave we were hysteric in terms of the trying to keep strict. Now we are almost anarchic. So it's like a pendulum going from one point to the another.
Yeah, and like Malgorzata mentioned before, the Conservative Party won the election in Poland, and we see polarization, all over the world. Like last week, the capital. Is there polarization in Poland, and if so, can you tell us how it looks like?
Me or Malgorzata?
And you, Kuba. The question is for you.
I think it's the. Again, that's a kind of obviously global phenomenon. Technically, we are almost split by half, and it's, I'm a sociologist, so I still trying to understand how it's possible that you're going to sleep to believe that someone is going to win an election or being in Europe, or live it as a Brexit, and on the day morning you discover there's a different of moral tribes, if you like. It's probably the existential right now. It's on the edge also of the violence. So I think Poland is not unique in that sense, that we are somehow lost, and what is really mentally keeping us together is not what we dream for, but whom we in the same collectively hate. And it's also the same in Poland. So right now, it's not the part of that story, but we do whatever is possible to put it in a kind of a we are trying to discover in Poland for 2 years, training people to build bridges, to talk. Actually, we train 100 people in Norway, I guess. I know. But in a sense, I think we all need a kind of a pacifistic movement before the war, not after the war. I don't know if it's possible, because I think those kind of events are kind of lessons after the war. I know it sounds like a kind of emotional, but I think right now that the kind of division goes through the kitchen table, through political parties, media. So we're living at 2 different camps, and we have to do something positive about it.
Yeah, I think Malgorzata wanted to add something there, right?
Yeah,
please.
Even in the Netherlands, I can maybe try to explain the context to the Dutch audience, because for people living in the Netherlands, it could be very difficult to understand what's going on in Poland in pandemics, because there is something more going. except for getting through the pandemics. It's what Kuba was talking about, is a big assault, struggle on what some people call liberal democracy. I prefer the word pluralistic democracy. And on the top of it, you have this economic crisis problems coming. So the situation in Poland for the Dutch audience is very complicated, hard to imagine. More or less, you can compare it with what's happening in the United States and we saw on the Capitol. And so it's very complicated, and the polarization is very, very huge, and it does not make things easy. In Holland, we also see radicalization. People getting they are tired of Corona, and they are getting fed up and getting more. Aggressive or more looking forward to have some peaceful times. But what Kuba said is more anarchy and disobedience. I read today in the newspaper that the businesses are going to disobey the rules of the government and open their businesses. It's incredible.
Yeah.
But this is showing this above the Corona. You have this political tension and a low trust society where the citizens, like now in the pandemic, are feeling unsafe because of the government.
Yeah, thank you. What I want to dive more into is the protests against the new abortion law, which I mentioned before in Poland. Kuba, can you tell us what the restrictions are and what is special about the demonstrations against this legislation?
The restriction is obvious. We are one in Europe. There are only, I think, 2 or 3 countries which has put it that way. The other option, then, basically, technically speaking, is it was a ruling of the Constitutional Court, which is kind of a fake Constitutional Court because it was absolutely hijacked by the ruling party, and that's the main problem of Poland. It's not the problem of democracy; it's a problem of. Because unfortunately, almost all of those things happening with this kind of a democratic permission by very small margin, but that's what they do. So they think we'll have a problem with the liberal democracy, not with the democracy as such, if you like. And, after the main thing right now is that 30 years ago I was much younger, and that we were, in a sense, convinced that the history has ended, in a sense. And now we are afraid that history is going to repeat itself. So I think the kind of the best actually metaphors and analysis is kind of a Weimar Republic, more or less 100 years ago, and how the democracy, it's too weak, in a sense, to cope with this kind of a situation. One of the, but technically speaking, the ruling party decided to make a kind of a special decision of a so-called tribunal court, which basically banned the abortion beyond a very, very, very low, very narrow limit of legality, in the sense, so making it technically impossible. And we were living for more than 20 years is something which is called in this country compromise, which was the compromise organized basically among the more conservative Catholic Church and the people who were at that moment was designing the Polish constitution, and they put it the other side. And that was a very kind of fragile kind of equilibrium, if you like. But they break that thing, and people basically, in a sense, erupted because it was happening during the lockdown. So that was a kind of a design to keep people silent, because they were confident, I guess, that it's going to be. So it was, in a moment, was in a sense putting a lot of pressure and closing people's mouths. So people react, mainly women, on a big scale, at least in the Polish, you cannot compare it with Belarus, but in Polish scale, it was huge. There are 2 important elements, because it's not the first time where women are on the street. The first thing, very important, is it is happened to be, in a sense, active also in the smaller cities. So it's not like a metropolitan. It's not only Warsaw, because basically it was quite predictable that in Warsaw, people who are more liberal, in a sense. But the real thing is that in the rural areas, almost so it's on a massive scale. And the second is that you have actually convergence of this kind of a women's agenda with the, in a sense, the first wake up in the sense of so-called Generation Z, which more or less, I have 3 kids of Generation Z, kids who were born like after 1995. And they also feel this, like, something's wrong going, so they are deprived of their kind of a future. So you have 2 very strong momentum, one more or less traditional, and the second are young people who are more and more ignited around the issue of climate and many other things. And right now, and I promise to shut my
And you see this movement, this movement is all over the world, isn't it, Kuba?
This movement right now is trying right now to articulate itself. So they're using a special software even, because you cannot meet. They use Lumio actually, which is a product of one of the. Lumio was previously used by Podemos, Indignados, I guess, few other groups. Basically, how to use internet as a vehicle of the serious conversation about the political agenda. So right now, all of us are sitting at home and trying to distillate whatever it might be a kind of a political agenda going beyond lamenting and protest.
And I see you talking about young people, Malgorzata. You mentioned it before. Can you share more about your insight about how young people are about this case, how they're looking to it?
Well, I can tell about the Polish people in the Netherlands because
Please.
Very quickly after the announcement of this so-called ruling of so-called constitutional tribunal, pseudo-constitutional tribunal, immediately, it was on Thursday night, and immediately on Friday, there were people gathering in front of the Polish embassy in The Hague. And 2 days later, on Sunday, there was a big demonstration in Amsterdam at the Museumplein, some 200 people. And 3 days later, were all spontaneous people coming together. And thanks to Facebook, this tool is fantastic to organize such protests. And on Wednesday, the weather was very bad. It was pouring heavily, but we had demonstrations. I attended it, despite the pandemics in The Hague. There were 500 people, men and women. And maybe, you don't know, whether you could show the video of it I made. And we had also some Dutch politicians, both from European Parliament and from the Dutch Parliament, talking to the Poles who were protesting against the ban on abortion in Poland.
Yeah, about those 500.
And they are very, they were spontaneous, and all of these women shared the feeling we have to support our colleagues, our sisters in Poland, and everybody. And it was something very exceptional. I have never seen such a big demonstration of Poles in the Netherlands, and it happened all over Europe, and it was incredible. And later they were also organizing small events in Eindhoven, Tilburg, and other cities.
We have a clip from these protests in the Netherlands in The Hague, so we're gonna watch it right now.
The idea of solidarity was born quite a while ago. We all remember Lech Wałęsa. We all remember the fight 30 years ago. Right now, the history is repeating. We want to show solidarity with Polish women who are fighting for their rights. I came here because Holland is a wonderful country when it comes to rights. I don't have it in my own country. And there are lots of people who are exactly in my shoes.
Yes.
Kuba. So it was great.
Yeah, it looks great. And I know we need to go to Kuba for a last question because he has to leave us in a minute. Kuba, I want to ask you a question about your own foundation, Stoczna, the Shipyard Foundation. Could you tell us about the financial support during the crisis and also about other projects Shipyard has related to the Corona crisis?
Okay, since I have just a few minutes, I have to cut that thing. Is this just organization? I mean, in the Dutch context, it might be somehow comparable to either VAC Society or Koningsland Foundation. Basically, we do a lot of innovations on different issues, social innovations, so-called. During pandemic, we have, we basically do divide ourselves into small teams. I was working, for example, trying to revigorate, which was tough and in fact unsuccessful in a sense, to revigorate parishes as the element of a support network. It's 11,000 parishes in Poland. Obviously, Poland is in that respect very different from Holland, but basically other people were trying to organize volunteers. Other were working with the so-called makers movement, which more or less is hacking old computers to make them available to kids who are so we basically kind of a refurbishment of the computers to be useful for kids. But we also have jointly with the City Hall of Warsaw, we were trying to provide support for people working and activists in the field of culture. So we started competition and we awarded about 120 projects out of the 1,000 proposal, which is for the other discussion, because we discovered as institution and culture, particularly in this kind of an institutional precariat, if you like. So obviously that kind of a situation for many people that was completely disastrous. That's not enough, but it's kind of an interesting case because we're able to support with a small subsidies because it was kind of a mix of the cultural products / social support, but for many people there was completely, and it is complete disaster. So we have about 120 projects in Warsaw, very small projects for people of culture. The same more or less was done in Krakow and in Gdańsk. So big cities were trying to, in a sense, protect their kind of a cultural tissue, if you like. But I mentioned people, in the business sector, but sector of culture, it's in a desperate situation.
Wow. Well, thanks for your insight and sharing these thoughts with us, Kuba. I heard that you need to go, so thanks for joining this livecast. Please, we want to stay updated, so hopefully we can speak to each other soon. Bye-bye. Małgorzata, please stick around. We might talk to each other later during the program. But for now, we will go to the next part, and that's the intermezzo. But before we go on to the intermezzo, I would like to invite Paweł Lozinski. He's a director, cameraman, and producer of documentary films. Welcome, Paweł.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Jorgos.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Hi, Jorgos.
Hi, hello, Paweł. First, we will watch a great clip of your documentary, Masks and Men.
Dzień dobry, Pawełku.
Dzień dobry. Dobrze, że jesteś.
Pewnie, że dobrze.
Bo chciałem cię jako lekarza podpytać, doktora. Lekarza. Co to z nami będzie w ogóle?
Świetne pytanie.
No, a jaka odpowiedź?
No wszyscy umrzemy.
No kiedyś, ale teraz co będzie?
No może teraz prędzej.
Cóż, kiedyś Rzymianie nie wiedzieli, że żyją w ostatniej setce lat świata starożytnego, a potem przyjdzie średniowiecie. My też tego może nie wiemy. Przyjdzie coś nowego, innego. Kto wie, czy kłaniamy się tym nie martwimy specjalnie, prawda? Z naszą perspektywą życia. No, życzę w każdym razie zdrowia.
Do zobaczenia.
Wie pan co? Po po coś to wszystko jest?
Po co?
Może po to, żeby rybki w kanale w Wenecji miały lepszą wodę, a Chińczycy lepsze powietrze. Nie wiem.
A nam na co się przyda?
Wie pan co? Nie wiem. Może będę zdrowa. Może przeżyję.
Bardzo tego życzę.
Dzięki.
Pavel, please can you tell us, what did we see?
It's a fragment of a film called Masked Man, which was shot by me from my balcony on Walecznych Street in Saskakępa district in Warsaw. It's a long story, but I will try to make it short because I started to make a film called Balcony Movie 2 years ago in spring 2018.
And that was before the pandemic.
It was long time before the pandemic.
Okay.
Nobody even thought about the pandemic 2 years ago. So I started to make a film about passers-by, about the people who I met on the street, standing with my camera fixed on tripod and my microphone on the first floor. And I tried to speak, to tell with people about life, what's okay, what is good, what is bad, what their feelings, what they want, what they need, about fears and hopes, love, and such kind of stuff. Important questions. So I'm still busy making this film, but one day during the pandemic, Iza Łopu from HBO Poland called me and she asked me to make a short film for the series entitled At Home, 14 different film directors, and I was one of them invited to make a film. So I decided to use this tool, which I already had, the camera, balcony, and some friends, some neighbors, and some people, which was who were like just know how to speak with me, and I knew them very well already. So yes, that's how the project was started.
I had the privilege of watching parts, and I thought it was very interesting to see, but because at the beginning you were like, what am I watching? But after like 30 seconds or a minute, you're immediately into it. And you just explained about the idea came in 2018. Did the context of the pandemic give a different meaning to the same format you had?
Yes, because during the pandemic, even to meet men on the street was completely forbidden, and to talk with with him or her, it was like 2 meter distance, and everybody was extremely afraid of speaking with each other. But the human beings are very social, have a social nature. They have to speak, they have to talk, they have to communicate, they have to chat. So this balcony gave me the privilege, because I had 4 meters of distance from my balcony to the sidewalk, so I can easily and with all rules speak with people, and they had a very big need of conversation.
Yeah, the funny thing is you talk about the 4 meter distance with the balcony and you. Now during Corona times in the Netherlands, we have 1.5 meter distance. In Poland, it's 2 meters. But
still,
what does this distance mean physically and mentally?
Physically and mentally, it's very difficult for the people, because we need to have contact. We are such kind of animals that we need to speak. So, but in the beginning of the film, I observe kind of the 3 or 4 maybe different reactions of people to the pandemic. We are talking about the first pandemic in March, April 2020. Yeah. So they are one of them who they were afraid of the virus, of course. There are some of them who protest against the anti-COVID regulations that we don't, because they were very strict. I couldn't even take my dog for a walk to the park, which was completely absurd, for me and for dog and for everybody,
Yeah.
And then another reactions was denying the virus, of course, that this virus was in our society for years. Somebody told me he's in a film, but in first part that you cannot show, unfortunately. And but in the end, the protagonists, they accept the situation, and like this one woman who has a cancer, and it gives us kind of, we start to think that this virus is not the end of the world, that the world is still going.
Definitely.
Definitely, and we're still living,
Yeah, luckily we still live. I want to ask something to Malgorzata, because what did you think of the presentation of Pavel and the clip?
I found it a great clip, and a bit surrealistic, to be honest. As a journalist, I was this empty streets of Warsaw, and this car coming by and talking to people not to move, because in Poland the lockdown was really full lockdown in springtime, not like in the Netherlands. So you could not walk outside without permission. So Pavel could not walk out his dog even. So the situation was completely different. But I was surprised as a journalist, looking how you communicate with people, and I wondered, how did you manage to get their response? And then I discovered, well, you had a camera, so you were like a big brother watching, and maybe this was the reason.
I was like a small neighbor, and I was standing there for more than 2 years already, so I became part of furniture, I was completely transparent, and I was this crazy guy who is standing on the balcony for 2 years. I spent there more than 150 shooting days,
Oh my God. But I found very interesting, the people were very honest, and their stories, like philosophical answer, very pragmatic, and this last shot we've seen, I've seen the lady with cancer responding in a very, very interesting way. So it is a great movie. Very, very characteristic and symbolic for pandemics, and congratulations.
Congratulations, Pavel. Thank you for your story. Please stick around. We're going to the second panel discussion, and because also here in the Netherlands we see that the pandemic has great impact in the arts, cultural sector. Museums are closed, theaters are not open, there are no live gigs anymore. It's kind of hard for the sector. At the same time, it has now become clear that art is more important than ever, and people are still doing it. Pavel made a documentary during Corona, the lockdown, so that was great. And in this part, we will talk about the impact of Corona on art and culture in Warsaw. We will thus have a conversation with culture and art professionals. We will talk about this with Tadeusz Straszczyk. He's a festival coordinator at Watchdogs. Hello, Tadeusz.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Nice to have you here, Tadeusz. Also, Ika Sinkiewicz-Nowaka, who is curator and founder at the Ujazdowski Residency.
Hello.
Hi, very nice to have you here. And Paweł Lozinski, who is director, cameraman, and producer of the documentary films. We spoke, we just spoke. So, my first question to Tadeusz. You're a festival coordinator at Watchdogs. Can you tell us more about the Watchdogs Film Festival?
Definitely. Thank you, Jorgos, and once again, thank you for having me.
Yeah, nice to be
Watchdogs Human Rights in Film International Film Festival. This is actually the whole name of the festival. Is the oldest documentary film festival in Warsaw, the capital city of Poland. Its first edition was held in 2001, which actually means that despite the coronavirus, last year we've celebrated our 20th birthday. Luckily. Thanks. The festival is organized by the Helsinki Foundation for Human Rights, and since the festival's establishment, its mission has been to showcase creative cinematic documentaries which combine film art with commitment to individual rights and social problems. Apart from the International Film Festival, which is held annually in Warsaw, Watchdogs is also an umbrella for a number of film initiatives, such as the Traveling Festival, which visits over 30 localities all over Poland every year. Also, Future Docs workshops for activists and filmmakers, school screenings, and other alternative distribution projects.
Okay.
We also cooperate with our partners in Belarus in organizing Watch Dogs Belarus in Minsk and other cities. And it's worth mentioning that despite the coronavirus crisis and the ongoing massive and violently suppressed protests, the festival in Minsk actually also did take place last year in 2020. And it was only thanks to the strength and unthinkable resilience of local activists. So it was something really extraordinary that the event took place despite all of these events last year in Belarus also.
Okay.
So just to wrap up, at Watch Dogs, we reach over 100,000 viewers with our film projects. But most importantly, Watch Dogs is also a social movement, which brings together people from all over the country and pinpoints most important social problems and phenomena. Yeah.
Nice. So can you tell us more about the main challenges the Watch Dogs Festival faced, and what kind of creative solutions did you come up with?
Of course. Well, 2020 was a real roller coaster for the festival, probably similarly to other cultural institutions and probably the whole world.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
With the cinemas closed and the lockdown in cultural institutions, we've had to come up with solutions how to reach our viewers despite the pandemic. Probably unsurprisingly, we decided to organize the whole event on the internet. And with today's tech, it might seem not that great of a challenge, but it quickly turned out that the festival is much more than just a collection of films. We did not want to become yet another streaming service, so we've had to come up with ideas how to recreate this communal social aspect of being in the cinema with other viewers. So although most of the films were presented in the video on demand streaming model during the festival week, which is currently a go-to method for most of the festivals that went online, we decided to organize a number of screenings scheduled for a particular day and time, later followed by Q&A or a discussion in a similar fashion to the cinema screenings. So this is the important thing. In this part of the lineup, among others, we decided to premiere a short Polish documentary 7th of August by Michał Bolent about the protests of the LGBT community, which took place in Warsaw last summer. You can see the pictures now. While Kuba Wygnański in the first part already spoke about the massive protests against the new abortion law in Poland, it also seems crucial to mention that in 2020, a homophobic tsunami engulfed Poland. Vilified by the ruling political party, the LGBT community became the target of an intense campaign supported by the church and public media, a hate campaign. And the wave crested on August 7 when the LGBT community said enough, demonstrating on the streets of Warsaw in defense of one of the LGBT activists. In order to retain this communal element of reliving these shocking events, we watched the film together with our viewers at a certain hour and later discussed it with the film's participants and experts. In that way, we tried to follow the principle of bringing of Watch Dogs being a social movement and bringing most important social problems to the viewers' attention. And this is something that Paweł also spoke about, that people need to communicate with each other. And this is what the festival is really for, not only for watching films, but also for discussing them.
Yeah. Well, talking about Paweł and documentaries, Paweł, how did the crisis affect you as an artist?
Oh, I had this, and I still have this privilege that I have my balcony, and I'm still shooting. But for example, I have two great, maybe even famous actors in my house. But they were unemployed for months, and there is a tiny support from Ministry of Culture. It's called digital culture or something like this. But I was not a beneficiary of this program. No, the problem is that culture is one of the first cuts made by the government. Yeah. And we are infected by coronavirus, and we are infected by virus of nationalism in the same time. we don't have the vaccine against it for a while, unfortunately. So the right-wing government is not interested in culture unless it's a patriotic propaganda, which is not a culture as we understand it as a free exchange of thoughts and emotions. So the condition of a lot of artists is very, very poor right now in Poland. So that's a big problem.
Like there are similar situations out here in the Netherlands. A lot of friends of mine being artists, face the same problem, basically. But Ika, I want to thank you for being here. I have a question for you. You're curator and founder of the Ujazdowski residency. I hope I pronounced that well. How did the pandemic affect the residency, and were you still able to produce during the lockdown?
Thank you for your invitation. So I'm working at the Ujazdowski Castle Center for Contemporary Art, and in frames of this big institution, I'm running a residency program. Okay. And of course, residencies are strongly connected with artists and art professional mobility. And in our frames of our program, we try to act globally. So of course, we couldn't avoid impact of pandemic on our activity. Some of the artists simply couldn't come from Latin America, from Palestine, or from the other countries. The others stayed for much longer than expected. So we tried to be very plastic during the pandemic and rethink the way we are working, and also rethink the content of our projects. We are collaborating strongly with City of Warsaw that supports our program, and they were really open for all those changes. So we were like allowed to reflect on the matters that became super important in this unusual reality all of us suddenly felt. I've brought here a few minutes of the trailer of the program that I would like to briefly talk about.
Yes,
the project
please.
is called Redirecting East, Empathic Pedagogies. It's a seminar that usually lasts 1 month, and art professionals from different angles of the world meet. Of course, this time we couldn't bring them to Warsaw, and my colleagues Marianna Dobkowska and Julia Horasimowicz, who were curating the project, already in April decided to change the plans, and we tried to test hybrid format, so to invite local Polish participants and work online with those who are coming from Latin America. As we all are affected both mentally and also like space-wise, physically, by pandemic, we decided to think about forms of cooperation in this digital reality, like how can we actually, and if it's at all possible, to create intimacy between people who are meeting in this virtual space and have an opportunity to share physical space. So you can see in this like short video, it's only a trailer, and on our website you can see the whole description of the project, how basically we looked like. So we were trying to test different methods and different ways of creating intimacy between people and practicing it also.
Yeah, do you have some examples or tips about this intimacy?
Yes, I do. We understood, and participants are talking about that in the magazines, in the interviews that are on display on our website. That is super important to create horizontal structures nowadays, like structures that are based on trust, on openness, on empathy. It's really important to remember that we are not able to travel physically from one place to other place, somehow to decompress before we change our reality. So it's very important to take care for our psychical and also mental shape while we are starting our meetings in this digital space. It's nice to make a check-in, and it's nice to really make sure that we are able to concentrate on what we are doing at the moment. Participants of the workshop who have enormous experience in pedagogy, in activism, in different ways of treating non-formal education, they were proposing different exercises to the other participants, as sharing the dreams and also mutual listening of those voices and sounds that are behind all of us, that are sitting in many different corners of the world in the darkness, like in creating the dark room that we all share suddenly in this virtual space. And all those practices are connected and are brought on one common website. So under Future Intimacies.org, you will be able to find some of them. Seminar was just completed, so it's still fresh, and the group will be trying out to continue this like distance friendship further.
Okay, thank you. Earlier in the program, we talked about the social context of Warsaw, about, for example, the protests and the elections. 2020 was a strange year, I think, for the rest of the world, and a lot of things have been happening. Ika, did you notice that it also had any impact of the work of artists you work with?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about that?
I was observing that. I believe that artists are extremely good frontiers in responding to different demands of our reality. And I can bring just two examples of the works that were initiated, among the others, by Karolina Grzywnowicz, resident, our common present resident, and also fantastic visual artist with whom I'm collaborating. So you can see also a couple of images that I brought and a short video with her. So beforehand, we've been talking a lot, especially Kuba and Małgorzata, about the legalization of abortion and also the vision of our society when it comes to the presidential election. So at Ujazdowski Castle, we at the moment are facing the situation. The institution is representing one of those places with where those two opposite ideologies meet. So we have a new director since the beginning of the year, who is representing this, let's say, right, more conservative approach. And a lot of artists who are coming are very much supporting first women protests that are going ahead in Warsaw. And they were also sharing the fears of the community that was afraid of taking part in this not prepared well correspondence election. So they come up together with Michał Frydrych and a lot of others, Polish artists or Warsawian artists and curators, to reenact an action from 1967 that was initially organized by Tadeusz Kantor in completely different context of communist Poland, but to reenact it those days, and they've painted a long painting that was like a letter. It was a letter from the souvenir of Poland addressed to the Polish parliament. And on this letter, there were stamps with two coronavirus symbols. And additionally, there was like a motto, slogan, live, don't die, but the comma between those two words was not in the right position. So it opened up many different but this is not only, of course, example of positioning. Artists nowadays are crossing, like going out of the sphere of art. They are working a lot on the edge of education and activism, merging practices from the everyday life with arts, and bringing them up to the position, very meaningful position, and something that can influence and change our perspective.
Okay. Well, I have Tadeusz, I want to ask you something as well, because in your opinion, how did the pandemic highlight the already existing inequalities in the Polish cultural sector?
Yes, this is actually something that Paweł already touched upon. You could point here to economic factors. So the disparities in the cultural sector became not only visible but also better understood, because overnight they began to concern not only the cultural sector, which is relatively a small part of the Polish economy, but also other groups. In Poland, one of the main problems that should be brought to the attention is the precariousness of the employment. So low-paid and unstable employment based on civil contracts is the harsh reality in Poland. Many Polish artists and people in the cultural sector experience problems in obtaining continuous social and health protection. For people in the culture in Poland, the lockdown actually meant that overnight they could lose their social or health insurance unless it was paid individually, because the lockdown in cultural institutions meant that there were no more civil contracts for them. And this is actually something that might be unthinkable in many European countries, for people to lose social and health insurance overnight. So people started to take notice of that because it started to be a problem of greater numbers of people in our society. Just to wrap it up, as a follow-up to already what Paweł said, it might be important to just say that unfortunately the pandemic relief grants to cultural institutions and to the cultural sector were not adequate enough, and they were also awarded according to principles that were heavily debated.
Okay. Yeah. So Paweł, you just made this documentary. What are your future plans in context of the corona crisis? Have you thought about that? Of course.
First of all, I have to finish my balcony movie, and I hope it will be shown on ITFA Amsterdam this year, and then maybe a fiction film, a feature one. Not only documentary, because the documentary it's very difficult to make. You spend like 3-4 years of your life making a film, and it's a lot of time. Fiction film is much more simple than documentary. You write a script, you ask an actor to help you to make a film, you need to collect some money, of course, and then it's like 3 weeks of shooting, and that's it. And documentaries, I spent, as I told you before, the 150 days on my balcony, so I'm a bit tired.
What we say in Greece is "αυτό που πονάει αξίζει και είναι δύσκολο." I'm going to translate it for you. It's like it's like that thing that is worth it is most of the times it's difficult and it takes a lot of time. So I thought it was amazing, your doc. But I want to ask you. I have like a statement before we wrap up. That's something we spoke about earlier. Is the political virus more dangerous than the medical virus? And Paweł, we spoke about this earlier. Can you give us more insight about what do you think of that statement?
Listen, I'm really, I don't know how to answer, because it's, as Kuba Wygnański said before, our situation is like same as in a lot of countries in Europe and in America as well. We are two tribes, we are divided, and I don't know how to glue the people together. I'm very afraid, about this, because we are teared apart, It happened in our families. We cannot go to Sunday dinner and not to speak about politics. It's the politicians are earning a lot of votes, dividing people, but the people and families are really, they are suffering. And that's what Ika said about the trust. We have to build the trust between us.
Yeah.
One more time. We have to, I don't know, reconstruct it in some way.
Yeah.
It's very. I don't have a good,
maybe
for it.
Maybe I can ask Malgorzata if she has any final thoughts about that.
Well, certainly, but my video is start my video. Okay. Oops. Here I am.
We see you.
Thank you. First of all, I'm watching very carefully right now what's going in the United States, because Joe Biden has to glue the society. He won and Poland is a bit similar to what's happening in the United States, big polarization, how to reconcile both sides. And I'm watching very closely how Joe Biden is coping with this task, because I think there will be lessons to be learned for Poland, for Polish politicians, opposition, how to first of all come to the power, and then how to bring people together. But except for that, I think it's also good what Kuba is doing, what Ika is doing, and Tadeusz and Pavel, because we have to make small steps, each of us, to contribute to bridge the gap. If everybody of us, just makes a small step, then you make a great effort. And secondly, I think we have to talk to each other, not only like we are doing right now, but with people on the other side, communicate and try to find a common ground. And I am hopeful that it will happen, but it will take time.
I think that's an amazing end. Communication is the key. So let's unlock. I really want to thank you all for making time and sharing your thoughts, sharing your point of views about the current situation. Malgorzata, thanks for having you here. Pavel, thank you. Good luck with finishing the doc.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you very much.
Definitely. I hope we'll stay in touch. Tadeusz, thank you as well. And
thank you so much.
Ika, thanks for taking time to be with us. Quite interesting. Quite interesting session to be honest. But I want to thank you for watching this series, Infected Cities of Warsaw. Our next episode will be on January 21st, and that will be the Infected Cities of Madrid. So I really would like to see you then. DutchCulture thanks you. Pakhuizen thanks you. And I hope you stay safe. Peace.